Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Slice of the Reef, our new podcast that demystifies the art of saltwater fish keeping. My name is Billy.
And I'm Giancarlo, aka Banana or Fishy Fish. We're going to be your guides today into the amazing world beneath the waves, but also in the box in your living room. Crazy, huh?
Enjoy and easy reefing.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of Slice of the Reef.
My name is Billy.
It's Fishy. Bro, why would you interrupt me?
Why did you pause randomly? I thought you were leading in. What are you doing?
I was leading in. Fine. I'm here. My name is Giancarlo.
And my name's Billy.
Banana. I also go by Fishy Fish.
You are the worst person who has ever existed.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Okay, you can go. You can talk.
Oh, what's up? Okay. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Slice of the Reef. Today, we're talking about anemones. My name is Billy.
Can I talk? Oh, my name is Giancarlo / Fishy.
Oh, you're the worst.
Oh, man. Keep it alive.
Before we talk about today's topic, we're going to talk about our own hobby updates. And then we have our topic. And we also have a segment that we're going to try to do called Myth of the Week.
Yeah.
Where we either debunk or discuss a myth that is no longer relevant. There's a lot of those in the reef aquarium hobby. It's basically, for the first 30 years of the hobby, it was just a bunch of bored rich men using anecdotal evidence in lieu of actual science.
I mean, it still is kind of, but
that's most things. But reefing is no exception.
Yeah, science and reefing don't mix until recently. Mainly, it's like, hey, we're gonna throw a dart, try some random shit, and see if it works. And if it works, we do it again.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, well, then we don't do this shit anymore. And we've tried a lot more stuff recently.
Exactly. Okay, so how is your hobby doing?
My hobby's doing great. I'm still tankless. I got to visit an LFS last week, which was really cool. And it was really disappointing because all of their stuff is really, 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 really expensive. To the point where like 60% off of that LFS was what you'll find in most other LFS like the regular price tag. So there was that. Otherwise, their stuff was all right. It was kind of mid. Scullies were small. Icanthos were all right. Overall, it's like, 2 out of 5. 3 out of 5, yeah.
And a 1 out of 5 for pricing, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that sucks because they can kind of get away with it because they're the only game in town. Right?
Oh, there's really not one, but I want to check out. Yeah, there's another one around here that I want to check out. So far, that's it, yeah. All right, how's your hobby? You got that thing set up?
Mixed. Obviously, I had that tank crash a while ago. Still rebuilding psychologically from that.
For those of you that know, Billy has like 4 tanks set up right now.
Yeah, and they're each fucked in different ways. So my main one is actually the algae's dying off because I realized I was keeping the lights on at full power for no reason because there was no corals. So I turned those down. What?
Is that the one where you have the nem in the beaker?
No.
Okay.
My second one is the nem in the beaker. That one isn't actually fucked, but I do need to get the clownfish because he's flashing. So I think he has ick or like flukes or something. That one's fine otherwise. My third tank, I only have 3. Banana's a big fat liar. Has 1 Gigantea anemone and 1 Haydeni, and that Haydeni randomly started showing signs of illness. So it keeps deflating and reinflating, and it still reinflates to the normal size, and it's not bleaching, so it's not like a really far along infection. But it seemed to have succumbed to something when my salinity was low and I didn't know, or high actually. It was high and I didn't know because I didn't calibrate my refractometer. And now the Gigantea in there that I was proactively treating is showing symptoms of infection too. So I have to kind of restart that and probably separate them so they're not like reinfecting each other. So that's fun. But I think I have it under control. Nothing's like on the brink of dying yet. It's just not thriving.
Yes.
And yeah. But I have 3 carpet anemones in total. 2 of them are the tricky kind, the Gigantea. 1 is healthy and the other 2 are currently a little bit sick, but because I'm so good, they're not dying. They're just like struggling a little bit.
What kind of sick? Like Tony Hawk sick or like bad sick?
Well, both. Yeah, both. So I'm probably going to break that tank down into 2 buckets and just treat those 2 different anemones differently because they have different needs until they're healthy again. And I'll set up the healthy one in a 15-gallon while I build up the courage to restart my actual coral tank.
Ooh,
That's
fair.
me.
Fair. All right, let's go into the topic, Billy. You want to kick it off?
All right. Anemones, yes. So what is an anemone and what are they in the context of marine life? They are cnidarians, which is the same phylum, I think, as corals.
Around that similar, yeah.
And the same phylum as jellyfish. So all of the goopy stuff in the ocean is kind of related to each other. And they kind of have similar life cycles to a certain extent. But then where cnidarians, like anemones in particular, differ is that they don't build skeletons. So they're not like stony. They're not stony like corals. They're not free floating like jellyfish, but they are modal. So they can move around. They have a little foot that they use. And you'll see that like a similar movement technique in a lot of corallimorphs and other like coral related stuff, because again, these are all kind of in the same big happy family.
Yeah.
And anemones are cool because they get hosted by clownfish, or they host clownfish, depending on how technical you are.
You get hosted by, I think they do. No, right? No, it's...
They're also a primary food source for turtles, like sea turtles.
Num.
So they're beneficial for sea turtles. They're also beneficial for clownfish because they protect those clownfish from predators.
Well, what a lot of people don't know about anemones is that they are photosynthetic. They do contain zooxanthellae, and that's basically algae that lives inside of their tissue. So the algae produces oxygen and other organic compounds, and that helps the anemone. And in turn, the anemone provides the zooxanthellae with like a little shell or like a body, which is kind of how most coral work. So I guess it's like where jellyfish meet coral. They are identified as, invertebrates or animals. They're sessile. So they attach themselves and then they're sessile.
Nuh-uh. They move. They're modal.
They move that much.
Sessile means they can't. Sessile means they can't move, I thought.
I guess sessile means they don't like to move.
Look it up. It's an organism fixed in one place.
Yeah, no, they're not sessile. They move. A cool thing about watching them move is that, like, if you watch them, there's 2 ways of moving. One is where they'll just detach, release water, and they'll float themselves wherever the hell the current takes them. And normally the problem is that in an aquarium, that means it'll go from one end of the tank into the wave maker. At which point it does become sessile. But like, it's like 12 or 13 different pieces of sessile anemone.
Only if your powerhead stops. Otherwise, they're still modal, and they're just a bunch of different modal bits and pieces floating through your aquarium, killing everything.
Yeah. Another way they'll move is it's like they walk, but you'll see half of their body filled with water, and then the other half of it doesn't, and then they just kind of shift the water around their body in a weird, like, waddle-like formation. It's really, really cool to see.
But again, you kind of need a time lapse because they move really slowly, slower than snails.
Yeah. Yes.
Ben, can you talk about the diversity of anemones available for your aquarium?
Oh my God, dude! You could not stop this one. Holy crap!
I would say there's 2 different groups, right? There's the rock anemones and there's the sand anemones. But that's a really vague way to group them. Basically, rock anemones have nothing in common other than they all live on rocks. There's like thousands of different species of anemones that live on rocks.
Yeah, no, there's currently like thousands of anemones out there. If you want to talk about diversity, you're going to be out there for a while.
Yeah, so let's talk about the main 2 that are available to the hobby, which is the bubble tips and the carpets. Well, so you really like bubble tips. What would you have to say about bubble tip anemones?
They have bubbly tips.
Oh.
What's up with that? No, so there's a lot of anemones available with the hobby. I guess I don't even put carpets up there. I'd say that bubble tips are the most common kind of like anemone that's available with the hobby. And that's mainly the one that you'll see sold or just available everywhere.
Because they're freaking gorgeous.
Yeah. And then you've got another one that's called long tentacle. You've got the long tentacles. You've got sea bays. You've got carpets. You got maxis. There's so many.
Yeah, very fair. Yes, I would say it's probably not accurate to say that carpets are like in the top 3. I would say it's probably top 10, but there's only really 10 big groups. Sometimes you'll see tube anemones, which is a whole different ball game. There's also like Aptasia is technically an anemone. Majanos are technically anemones. So some of the anemones are desirable. Some of them are pests.
They are pretty cool though.
That's true.
They are really cool.
Especially Majanos. Like I saw a tank that was quote unquote infested with them, and it just kind of looked like green star polyp.
Really pretty. But the problem with Majanos is they're uncontrollable. They will imagine something as invasive as Aptasia with the unkillableness of like, I don't know, GSP. It's just there's no controlling Majanos.
Just eat them to show dominance.
Once they're in the
Apparently people eat carpet anemones. Like they fry them and they eat them.
Have we tried it? I mean, I can't imagine it'd be too bad with some lemon. And
nothing's bad when it's fried with lemon, but not like that idea. Okay, so how long would you... Oh, well, I guess first we should talk about clownfish.
Clownfish. Okay, so we're going to introduce a new segment here, which is called the Fish of the Week. We did one a few months ago. We're doing it again. Bring it back.
Yeah.
And then this week is clownfish. Clownfish are really cool.
What a coincidence, because those have a commensal symbiotic relationship with anemones, which is our main topic for today. Wow, that's a great coincidence.
It's kinky dink. Well, so clownfish is pretty cool. So clownfish have this symbiotic relationship with anemones where they will live inside of the anemones, and the anemone will in turn protect it from harm. That's like the basis of it. Clownfish are a lot smarter than like the name implies, and they're a lot smarter than people think. They know how it's weird. Like they just naturally know how to care for the anemones. It's really cool. I mean, what are your thoughts on the belly?
What do you mean by care? Can you elaborate?
So I've personally seen in my aquarium where clownfish will grab shrimp and they'll bring it into the mouth of an anemone and they'll leave it in the tentacle, and then they'll just keep on doing that several times. And that's back when I fed larger kinds of, shrimp, like larger krill. Yeah, they would take it, they'll bring it into the anemone's mouth and they'll leave it there. What they'll also do is they'll suck on the tentacles, and to keep them small and to have this like little bulbous appearance, they'll remove any bad, twisted, or like tentacles that aren't good. It's one of the most unique relationships that are in the wild, and it's one of the most commonly referred to symbiotic relationships between the two of them.
There's a cool video of a clownfish not only feeding an anemone, like a big piece of shrimp, but also defending that piece of shrimp from other like opportunistic people, like fish trying to snipe that food. Yeah.
And it's pretty cool because, clownfish are covered by mucus, and there's studies now that are saying that the anemone recognizes that mucus, and when it recognizes that the mucus is there, it's less likely to attack that clownfish. Yeah, so anemones do sting, anemones do attack, and the way they attack is by releasing these little needle-like things, like hundreds of nematocysts, from the tentacles into whatever it's touching, and that's usually how it'll pull in shrimp or fish or whatever comes close to it. Some of them are stronger. I know carpets have really nasty stings to the point where like people themselves have gotten stung by carpets. That's why you really don't play around with them if you don't know them, if you're not too knowledgeable with them. Other ones like bubble tips are less harmless or less harmful. And obviously, like if you have an allergy, you want to be careful because you're going to get stung regardless. Or not stung, but you're going to get irritated regardless.
It's also not great for the anemone to go through the act of stinging you. So it's bad. It's a lose-lose, right? If the anemone is stressed already, and then it has to spend a bunch of its energy firing and then rebuilding nematocysts because it had to sting some dumb kid who tried to touch it without a glove.
Yeah.
You're doing both of yourselves a disservice.
Yes.
Both of yourselves. It's not how words work. You know what I mean?
Yep. It's just actually really cool. An important
thing to know about clownfish and anemones is not all anemones host clownfish at all. And not all clownfish will naturally and instinctively host every type of anemone.
Yeah, the most commonly found not friendly one that's very commonly sold is the Condylactis or the Condylactis gigantea. These get big. These are prettyish, purplish, grayish bodies. Red body, purple tips, and then their skeleton, or like not skeleton, but like the base of it's pink. Or the foot's pink. Mm-hmm. They're really cool, but they are not beginner friendly because they'll move around a lot and they'll sting everything. They'll sting most clowns that go into them. I'm not saying all clowns. Obviously there's always an example where someone's like, hey, look, my Ocellaris went to this candy. It was just fine. But they're known for stinging and not hosting clownfish. Yeah.
Yep. What's another good one?
Tube anemones also don't host, mainly because of how they, survive. I mean, tube anemones are more like fan worms.
They're so far removed, I think, like genetically from the standard anemones that it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. They're more they're more classified as Seriantids because of that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So not only will certain clowns not host certain anemones, the captive bred clowns will not host anemones by default until they've seen other clowns doing it.
No,
or they get lucky.
Sometimes they'll do it.
Sometimes.
It's a hit or miss. Don't buy clowns and expect them to host. But at the same time, don't go buy clowns and they don't host. Because it's a hit or miss. I've had clowns that I got as small ones as fry, and then they started hosting. I've also had clowns that have never hosted. Actually, that's a lie. All my clowns have hosted. Really, I think it might just be you.
No. It happens to, like, when I used to work at an LFS, it happened to my customers. Like, they would buy an Ocellaris, like a $20 Ocellaris, and the cheapest bubble tip we had, which was like $100, which is insane. And they would just throw them in a bucket together, a tank, and be like, okay, why aren't they hosting? Well, there's two reasons. One is Ocellaris don't natively host bubble tips in the wild frequently. And the other thing is, if they've never seen another clownfish hosting an anemone, the instinct might not be activated yet.
Yeah, that's right.
So you have to basically teach them yourself by either showing them videos of clowns hosting anemones.
Yeah.
So just like Generation Z, they learn most of the things they know from YouTube. Or by just like dropping it in the anemone to like give it a taste. Obviously, do that carefully. Don't leave them in there to potentially be stunned and eaten while they build up a resistance or whatever happens.
I think it's there. They just need to know that they can get in there.
Yeah.
I
still haven't done that with my my two-banded clownfish. I don't want to drop them into a giant Gigante anemone and just cross my fingers.
I will take one of those spare Chicagos that I had and I put it in a breeder box, and then I'll take a clownfish that I got and I put that in the breeder box and just leave them in there for like a week. And after a week, you see the clown living in it.
Yeah, they figure it out. They're pretty stupid, but they're also pretty smart.
They're smart. Clownfish are smart. They're a lot smarter than you think.
They're good at something.
Must get mean clownfish. Anyways, yeah. Those are amazing. Them are one of the weirdest creatures you'll find. And then clownfish that are hosting them, which is parallel to that. Especially when you consider the varieties and how many types of each there are, and that they just kind of know this instinctive desire to go into an M is there eventually, even though it's not going to be there immediately. Like in Billy's case, several times.
I mean, all of my clowns that I've had so far have hosted eventually. One of my saddleback clownfish, before I had to return them because they were being absolutely insane, they actually hosted one of my Alveopora colonies, and the female would chase the male in loop-de-loops around it. It was really... And then I got them a Hayden Eye, and they hosted that immediately instead.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a really thing. I love saddlebacks. My first pair of clownfish was a saddleback. It was a saddleback
They're so dumb.
They're
being smart.
They're so cool.
I like them better when they're small. Like my baby male saddleback was so freaking cute.
Oh, mine got big. The female got to around 3 inches.
Yeah, they're huge.
And then the male got to like 2 inches. They're in the wild, they're one of the smartest clownfish types because you'll see them actually moving shells.
Oh yeah.
And rearranging the rocks. Have you ever seen that on planet Earth?
Yeah. I'll find it.
Where they've been actually seen cleaning and moving the rocks around to.
I'll find a link for you guys.
Move a shell around to make the nems. Oh, it's really cool. But yeah, so then, we've just told you that there's so many kinds of clowns, there's so many kinds of nems, and then the question arises, obviously, how do you find the right anemone? Right? Like, how do you find the right anemone? How do you find the right anemone?
I honestly, patience, because there's two main reasons you want to be patient. One is your tank probably isn't ready right off the bat, and you probably aren't ready right off the bat. You need to be really good at maintaining salinity. But also, it's difficult. It's really easy to find an expensive anemone for sale fast. it's a lot harder to find an anemone for sale at a price it actually should be bought at. Like, our store would list just a standard bubble tip anemone for $150. And that was like the bare minimum. Like we would go up from there. Like if it had like any purple or like any of a certain color in it, or if they were even speckled, they would be $250 and would go up from there. Yes. And I think a lot of places do that because the few times they do sell an anemone, they're going to make a crap load of money and off people who are not willing to wait. Because a lot of hobbyists don't realize when they're buying their first nem is they split like crazy, especially bubble tips. So for fish stores, that's basically a money printing machine, especially if they're selling it at a high premium. But everyone who's ever bought a bubble tip anemone also has babies of that bubble tip because they split like crazy. So take the time to make sure your tank is ready, and also just like set out little searches, like recurring searches for OfferUp and Facebook Marketplace for like captive bred anemones.
Yeah,
and you'll say you should spend like maybe $50 on your first bubble tip.
I wouldn't even say that. So here's the thing: the cheaper bubble tips are cheap because there's a specific strain of rainbows out there, and it started off in one place. I don't know where it started off, but it got to the point where you'll see it everywhere. It breeds and reproduces and splits like there is no tomorrow, and it is just abysmal. It's actually kind of fun.
No, it's not a bad. If you get outpaced by anemones, you're probably doing it wrong.
No. There was a guy next to me with a 300, and he was doing whatever he could. This isn't me. He was like close to me. He lived close to me back then in Chicago, and they just split, like unreasonably split. Some nems would split for two reasons: if they're really, really happy, or really, really mad. And I don't know what he was doing. His neck was great. His pieces were amazing, and so they must have been happy. But the Nemos got to the point where they were splitting faster than he could take them out. And when I saw his tank, there were like 40, 50 different Nemos in there. Not different, but like 40 or 50.
Unique, individual
bubble tips in there that were just splitting nonstop. It was just nonstop. But yeah, so let's talk about finding an anemone. You don't want a Nem unless your tank's mature, unless your tank's ready. Normally, you want to wait a few months. You don't need to wait like 2 years like everybody else says. That's mythos. You don't need that. Just wait a few months. When your tank is happy, you see a lot of pods, you see some nutrients fluctuating, throwing them in there, it'll be happy. That's assuming it's not one of the harder nems because some of them are very difficult to keep. But, tank maturity is one thing. Tank size is another. For example, if you're going with a smaller tank, you don't want to get a Gigantea. The Psychodactyla Gigantea ability is a nem that likes to spread itself out. It loves just opening itself. And so if you keep it in a very small tank, or like in a beaker in a very small tank, like some people do, it's not going to be very happy. And then you're going to wonder why it's not happy. And you're like, hey, maybe if I didn't have this nem living inside of this narrow tube.
Oh my God. This is character assassination. My nem is very happy, and I'm moving it to a bigger tank very soon.
When's the big tank going to be set up?
And I had to put it in a transparent storage thing for observation because there was an infection point on its foot that I had to watch while I treated it. So show your dumb face.
Billy's nem lives in the beaker. That's like putting your kid in a closet under the stairwell.
Yeah.
Billy, your nem is like the Harry Potter of nems. He's gonna kick me. Yeah, so you want to watch out the kind of nems that you get. Long tentacles, they can get really big. Even bubble tips can get kind of big. If you have a smaller tank, it's recommended you go with mini maxis or the dwarf carpets, which only max out around 6 or 7 inches. You don't want to get them too big, right, Billy? So, Billy, did you just post a picture of your nem in the beaker? Yeah. So if you look in chat right now, you can see that Billy did post a picture of his nem in the beaker. Normally, you want them to spread out more than that. Like, his nem is reaching for the light. Oh, wow. That's a beaker. Another thing you want to keep an eye out for is lighting. A lot of people think that nems aren't coral, therefore they don't need fancy lighting. They do photosynthesize, and so having good proper lighting is crucial, regardless of the nem. They're all going to want some, they're all going to want some light at some point. They photosynthesize. Photosynthesis is lighting and turning that into energy. So unless you're able to maintain the proper lighting that a nem requires, it's not recommended that you get one, or especially one of the bigger ones. They do like decent flow. They like it so that the tridents don't settle on them. And then when it comes to how much flow, it really depends on the nem. I've had some bubble tips take it straight from the power head. I've had some bubble tips move away. The thing with some nems is that they'll move around to where they're happy. What are you using on it? Why does it look so yellow?
I'm using
you know what that nem tech reminds me of?
Your
You
mom?
ever make chicken maruchan? Chicken ramen?
Yes.
It looks like chicken. It's like chicken. Chicken broth.
This kind of look like chicken. Well, I mean, the problem is the power is so strong that I'm actively growing Fido in there.
Oh my
So I have
God.
to skim out the Fido.
Well, some pods
Because
in
the
there.
nem... Yeah, that's the one thing.
Really
Missing.
get rid of that.
I have like nematode worms on the glass, some sort of worms. But I all my pods died off, so I don't have like a source. I'll have to start like adding them to my display and then transplanting them over. But yeah, definitely don't do what I'm doing and keep a really big Gigante anemone in an 8-gallon tank in a weird beaker thing. I did also say I had to keep it in the beaker to inspect its foot because it had an infection when I first got it. But it's healthy now. Hey Gary, what's up?
Hello, Gary.
But yeah, don't do what I'm doing.
So fucking on the beaker.
I'm very stupid.
Is that beaker even reef safe? What was it
Yes.
before? Where'd you get that beaker from?
IKEA,
IKEA sells beakers?
apparently. Wait. Yeah, I think it was IKEA. Containers to keep the nem in. Oh yeah, I was going to talk about that random. I guess we could wait until the end
we'll get
to
to
bring
that.
this up as a question, but I was going to say this anyways. Basically, depending on what kind of anemone it is, whether it's a rock or a sand anemone, you can keep it in different types of containers. So for my Hayden eye, for example, which is a sand anemone, what I did in my original tank, and I'm going to do once it's healthy again, is I give it like a little, like a shallow dish of the sand it prefers, and I let it root in there. Because what it does is it doesn't root to the sand, it roots to stuff below the sand. So I put a bunch of like bulkier rock rubble on the bottom of the dish, fill it up halfway or so with like normal finer sand. Well, sorry, I won't fill it up. I'll let it root first, and then I'll add sand to the container. And that way it very rarely feels the need to leave. It'll still do laps around the container, but as long as it can't like reach other sand from its, like the edge of its dish, it won't really leave. And for rock anemones, you can surround them with sand and put them on a rock where you want them to be, and they'll very rarely manage to leave there. Now, don't forget to isolate them from the glass too, because if they can reach the glass from their rock without having to touch sand, they will definitely go on the glass, and then they'll get sucked into your power heads. What a lot of people do for their anemone tanks is they stick with like overflow or like gravity-based suction for water, and then they'll use the return pump or like a closed loop that's very tightly guarded against anemones to actually produce the turbulent flow in the tank. What I did is I just sectioned off my wave maker behind some egg crate, but that's kind of a ghetto move, so don't do that.
Yes.
Anyway, that's the answer to that question.
Yeah. So, as we were saying before building to with me, when it comes to mixing nems, normally the answer is keep the same species together, because nems do what is called chemical warfare, and it's actually really, really weird and really, really cool. Where if they sense I don't know what they're sensing, but if they sense chemical residue or anything of another nem in the water, right?
They smell them.
They smell if they smell them in the water, they don't have noses.
Well, what they do is they kind of crop dust the local area with nematocysts. Like they release some of their cells into the water through their mucus. And if they sense that coming from another anemone, they'll amp that up. This is all hypothetical, by the way. I don't think we actually have the science to prove this, but so if they're within a certain... What? No sense on the podcast? Just making shit up? That never happens. So I read this on Reef to Reef, so it's very scientific. Thank you very much. And if they sense like either the mucus or the nematocysts of another anemone in the area, they'll amp up their own. It's called allelopathy, apparently. And so they'll basically be at war with each other. And what'll happen is the anemones of different species, one of them will win and one of them will slowly either recede over time or just get infected and die.
Usually it's get infected and die. That's mostly what happened. We don't know if a lot of people... No, it's not really known if you can just take them out and move it somewhere else and let it recover. I think it just kind of kills it.
I mean, I'm kind of trying that right now. I'm not sure if it's just like a cross-contamination of whatever my Gigantea was infected with that's affecting my Haydenii, but I'm going to remove them to different tanks and see if it'll A, remove the cross-contamination, and B, prevent any potential chemical warfare. So I'll have an answer live in a couple of weeks based on what survives, what doesn't, basically.
Exactly what science is, what survives and what doesn't. But yeah, so when you're talking about mixing anemones, you really don't want to play around with different species. You want to stick to the same kind of thing. If you're doing bubble tips, do bubble tips. And even then, there have been instances for the longest time of some kinds of bubble tips messing with another. I had a friend who had a lot of bubble tips in his tank, brought in a wild one. It was a bubble tip, but he brought in a wild bubble tip, and that wild bubble tip wiped out all the bubble tips that he currently had.
Yeah, so that could be what happened, or it could have been a pathogen that it brought into the tank that the wild anemone was accustomed to, and the capture bred ones had never.
I think it was pathogen. I think it was a pathogen.
Yeah,
but yeah, because you can't dip, you can't copper a anemone, you can't do any of that with it. But at the same time, like there's instances of rainbows and then sunbursts killing one another, and nobody knew why for the longest time, and people still don't know why. It could have been chemical warfare, it could have been something else. But now, I mean, more people keeping together. There's still the hesitation. There's always still that like question. I remember it's funny because back during that day, during the time when anemones and bubble tips would kill one another, I had a giant rock covered in sunbursts as well as rainbow bubble tips, and they were fine. They were just doing their own thing. And whenever I had someone, they were fine. And whenever I had someone over to buy some stuff, they would always be like, "Is that a rainbow with a sunburst? How do you get them not kill one another?" Or it's always like, "How do you keep them together? What do you do?" And it's like, "Oh, well, I just kind of leave them be. They don't kill one another." It kind of is what it is. Yeah, but you won't have hesitation. It's always preferable not to. If you have a smaller tank, definitely don't, because you're gonna nuke some stuff. And that'll just affect, if you have coral or fish, that'll just affect that, because it does cause issues. Then
lots of fun.
So yeah, that's something to take care of. Look out, especially if you're gonna buy NEMs. The current NEMs they currently have. The biggest question though is like, how do you prepare your tank for a NEM? And this is where Billy can take it off.
Yes. So again, it's going to differ based on how experienced you are in the hobby. Like if you've set up tanks before and you've kept anemones before, you could probably start keeping an anemone within a couple of weeks, as long as you're sourcing a healthy one. But if you're completely new to the hobby, I would maintain a healthy, like cycled saltwater aquarium, ideally with some corals in it, because those are good canaries and like indicators, for at least 3 months before you add an anemone. And again, you don't have to just start looking for anemones at the end of those 3 months. You can watch message boards, you can watch OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace, etc. for really cheap ones that are captive bred. And once you feel you're ready, you can actually start engaging with those people and trying to purchase one. My first bubble tip anemone I got when my tank was 2 months old. I was not ready in retrospect. I think my tank was ready, but I was not. So it started showing signs of infection, and I didn't treat it with the proper medications. I just put it in like a little isolation box and changed the water out every couple weeks or after a couple days, because I thought that would help. Basically, I killed it because I wasn't like actually prepared for what to do if a bubble tip anemone got sick. And I just had to get better at that over time. So yeah, learn from my mistakes. What are signs of infection? Go for it, Banana.
Signs of infection, you mainly want to see if the NEM is shriveled up. You want to see if the NEM is discolored, if it loses coloration, if it's losing tentacles. If you see the mouth gaping open, that's a really, really bad sign.
It could be gaping open, or it could be like gaping itself inside out, basically.
No, yeah, usually you just see like a hole up here where the mouth was. The biggest thing is a sniff test. Do a sniff test. If you see that, yeah, if it, and a lot of people are like that's just a joke. He's just messing with us now. If you see an anemone that's really doing really bad and you're like, is my anemone dead? Because you won't know immediately. And the thing with anemones is that they nuke and they go bad really fast. From like, it'll die at 1 p.m. and it'll be rotting by like 3 or 4 p.m. because it's all that immediately dying zooxanthellae. So if you want to know if your anemone is dead, not infected, we'll get to infected in a second, but if you want to know if your anemone is dead, you take it out of the water, give it a good sniff. If you smell sulfuric or rot, that thing's gone. I wouldn't even try to save that, especially in a smaller tank. If you smell that, you're gonna lose some shit.
You will know what we mean if you ever smell it, and if you don't know what we mean, then it's probably okay.
Yeah,
it is usually like the worst smell.
Usually.
So again, for bubble tips in particular, like gaping its mouth, or what mine did is it started like it's really hard to explain, but it was basically like pushing its mouth inside out to the point where like there was like this kind of butthole looking thing on top of where the mouth used to be, but it was its own insides. Yes. So it was like a prolapsed anemone.
Yeah.
Another sign of infection is deflation, like repeated deflating. What they're doing when they deflate is they're exchanging their bad water with new water and trying to get rid of the pathogen that way. If you see it happen more than like once per week, I would be concerned.
Yep.
My Hayden eye is doing that like twice per day right now.
No, this doesn't mean like great. At night. At night, it's normal for anemones to shrink up at night. Mm-hmm. So if your anemones are closing up at night, that's normal. Don't forget about that. But if it's during the daytime and your anemone hasn't opened up, or you see like tentacles are looking very weak and shriveled up or half fold, or it's very lethargic, you want to, try something. You want to isolate it. You might want to quarantine in it. Run antibiotics, but if you can, just nothing too strong, obviously, because you don't want to kill this xanthellae. That's in them. Yep. And then, no.
Yeah, send us a picture, random, and we'll look at it. It's probably fine.
Yes.
So, yeah, fine. Take the time to find a healthy nem and make sure that your tank is ready and that you are ready. I didn't do that latter part, and so I lost my first nem. It did take a long time, though, so had I found the right person to give me the right advice at the right time, I probably could have averted it within the first couple of weeks. If you find a unhealthy anemone for sale, you'll probably know. The best ways to know are, again, if it's gaping its mouth or if it's deflating. But at the store, it probably won't do that. It'll more likely be just bleached. If you ever see an anemone for sale that is white and it's not a Condinactus or a Haitian anemone, that anemone is on death's door.
Funny story. Obviously my early reefing career was full of things that you would never tell anyone to do. Mm-hmm. So right after my tank finished cycling with damsels, it's one thing you should never do. I went to an LFS warehouse kind of thing that was by me, and they talked to us. I don't know how they talked us into doing this, but we bought 2 anemones. One was a yellow sea bay with really purple tips. Uh-oh. And the other one was this really bright purple pink other anemone. I don't know what it was. I found later it was a dyed long tentacle. And then we also got 2 pairs of clownfish. One was a saddleback, one pair clown was a regular clownfish pair. They were really cool. So the sea bay ended up dying within like a week and a half of me getting it. And then the long tentacle actually ended up, what happened to it? It lost the coloration, right? Because it was dyed. So it expelled the dye, and it lived with me for another 6-7 years before I ended up selling it off. But it got really, really big. It was a long tentacle. It ended up being a long tentacle, but it was really, really pretty, really cool.
I've never heard of a purple one.
It was dyed.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it was a dyed long tentacle.
I don't think people dye anemones as much anymore. I did see one dyed sea bay for sale recently, but it was literally listed as a dyed sea bay, which is funny. I think it's still sold. I don't know why.
It looked, I found the picture of it. Hold on. It was, it was like a really pinkish color. It was like a really pink purple long tentacle anemone. Kind of like this color.
Where'd you post it? Oh yeah, that's that for sure.
Yeah, and it ended up living. It was actually really cool. So the way that the foot of a long tentacle works is it doesn't, bury itself. It reaches its foot through the 3-inch sand bed, and it would attach itself all the way to the bottom. Like it would dig through the sand to touch the stuff. It was really, really cool.
So it's a sand anemone, but it still roots on rocks.
Well,
which is how it
touches, yeah. It touches stuff to the bottom glass. And then whenever I touch it, it would just like I'd see the entire thing just close itself and bury itself into the sand. It was really cool. I wish I had a video of it.
I'm sure you do somewhere.
No.
Somewhere out there. Okay, we're almost running up on an hour. So what should we talk about next? Should we talk about acclimating?
Yeah, like acclimation.
Okay, your turn.
Well, I don't really acclimate them. I haven't acclimated them in a long time, years.
Yeah, when I first got... Oh, go ahead.
No, actually, this isn't new because I don't acclimate nems. I have all the nems I need.
Yeah, when I first acclimated one, I dripped it for 3 hours. The thing about drip acclimation is it'll acclimate the water parameters, but it won't acclimate the temperature because your dripping bucket will always be drifting down towards room temperature. And room temperature is not great for tropical fish or tropical anemones.
Well, it depends. I mean, unless your room's average of like what, 72, 73?
No, normal humans have it at like 68, I think.
It's basically
apparently.
70.
But it's 4 degrees off from like the minimum that they're supposed to experience. So you're traveling outside. It's drifting towards whatever the ambient temperature is out there. Then you're leaving it in a bucket to drip for however many hours.
Yep.
And so it's drifting up to room temperature or staying the same depending on how cold or hot it is out.
Yes.
Your house is 61. Frag, you're insane. But yeah, so if you're going to acclimate it, then like drip it like that, be mindful of temperature. Put a heater in there that it cannot wrap itself around. My Hayden and I, when I first got it, really liked sneaking around my egg crate and hugging the heater and just getting like burnt to shit and then sloughing all that tissue off and potentially getting infected. So don't do that. I would drip it for a maximum of like half an hour and make sure that after you drip it, you're matching the temperature to your tank temperature. So either increase the rate of the drip or keep a heater in there that's set to the same number as your tank. But in reality, like after you get your first anemone, you're not going to be as scared. You can just float the bag to get the temperature matched up and then drop it in. When I say drop, don't actually drop it in, let it just float around. Turn off the flow. Again, get gloves because it's going to try to sting the hell out of you. And whatever's on your hand is probably not good for the anemone. Get gloves, even if it's just like nitrile gloves. Take it out of the bag, gently detach it from the bag if it's still attached to the bag. And yeah, just pop it on a rock and hold it on the rock for like a good 2 to 3 minutes. And it should probably attach to that rock. It might still detach after you let go. So that's why you want the flow off for the first day. Or not off, but like any wave makers that are particularly at risk of damaging the anemone. So if they don't have an anemone guard on them or they're very turbulent or strong, just use your best judgment and just leave stuff in like a lower flow state for that first night.
Yep, just let it chill. You just gotta let it chill, man.
Sometimes they will hide, they'll like move to the underside of the rock to hide at first because they're not adjusted to whatever lights you're using. Don't despair. As long as they're like peeking their tentacles out, they're still getting photosynthesis. You don't have to worry as much.
It's not about feeding your nems. How do you feed your nem? What do you feed your nems?
I don't know. I should start feeding them again. What I would do is I would buy like frozen shrimp and just thaw like 1 or 2 pieces at a time in like a little dish in my fridge. Chop it up to like maybe 1-inch cubes at the biggest. Turn off flow and just tweezer the shrimp directly into the anemone's mouth.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I used a Julian's thing to feed, which is really cool. You know what that is?
Oh yeah, the little squeezy thing.
Julian's thing. It's like this long syringe with a little thing tied to it, and then at the other end is like a little
squeezy
pipette. Yeah, the syringe at the other end.
Yeah,
it's really cool. I love it. I mean, once you have a bigger tank, you just kind of need it. It's a necessity. But I made my own fish food using crabs, mussels, oysters, fish guts. I threw mysis in there. I raised some brine. I threw brine shrimp in there. I threw everything in there. Anyway, octopus. There was squid in there. There was crab in there. Everything was in there. Anyways,
I got Hikari squid recently, and it's not what I thought it was. I thought it would be like chunks of squid. It was like little, like vermicelli noodles almost.
Yeah, it's just little squares, little pieces of squid. They just take the squid's head and they just slice it.
No, mine was weird. I think I might have gotten like a bad cube or something because it was not just chunks of squid. It was little shreds, like little shreddy things.
Really?
Yeah, and my Nems did not like them.
Yeah,
I'll try more.
That's weird. Hikari squid should be
Big chunks. Okay.
Yeah.
I will try again.
Yeah, so I blend it all together and that's what I feed them. But normally what I would do otherwise is whenever I feed the fish, I just squirt some mysis in their mouths and that'd be it. I call it at that. I don't do too much crazy shit with that. That's all you gotta do.
Yeah, BTAs don't like require feeding. I think carpet anemones do.
I feed BTAs.
Or
I also fed my carpet and I've also fed my long indigo. I fed all the nems.
Yeah, just feed everything.
They get big. Yeah. They get big. If you want your nems to grow really big, feed them a lot and they'll get there.
And they'll start extending their tentacles more to try to catch more food because they think they caught the food. They don't know that you did it for them.
Yeah. Something you want to, speaking of actually, if you feed your nems a lot, they get big. And if you feed them a lot, what tends to happen is they can split. Obviously, this isn't saying, hey, go overfeed your nem. I would feed mine like 2-3 times a week. Any more than that, and you see like nasty nutrient buildup, especially in a smaller tank. In the 180, I fed them like 3 times a week. And that would make them split fairly frequently. Luckily, I have them built on a pillar. So if they split, I just catch them as they're trying to make their way down from the back. And then, watch out for nems splitting. And then when the bait nem splits, it will wander. And so you really don't want your nem wandering, especially in the bigger tank, because at that point, you're just going to lose it. Nobody wants to wake up and see a nem huddled into the base of an acro. It's always not friendly. Not very fun.
Yeah, you can do a lot of damage with a $30 bubble tip anemone.
Yeah.
Once it starts wandering. So you should either plan for that and isolate it.
Or get the $100 bubble tip anemone.
The what?
Or get the $100 bubble tip anemone.
Yeah, so that way when it kills your $100 acro, it's net even, right? Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, perfectly balanced. Nothing should be. It's totally accurate.
No, it's dumb.
Yeah, that's... So we have some questions. We have a question from Val. Let's go into... Oh, wait. Do we have a myth? We don't have a myth, right? Our myth of the week is that nems are very good and hardy for beginners. And the reason I want to say that that's a myth is because of the fact that they do require a mature tank. And when you're dealing with your first nem, it feels like you're dealing with an alien. Like you don't know what it is. Even if you've had coral before, with coral, at least you know what to look out for. When you come to your first nem, you're like, is this okay? Is it puffy? Is it not puffy? Is it happy? Is it not happy? Like, what am I doing? It closed up at night. What do I do? Oh, it's not fully open today. What do I do? A lot of the times, you just kind of want to let it chill and do its thing. Let it find a place where it's happy. Design your tank around that, and you'll be fine. Otherwise, it's not really a very beginner friendly. By the time you get to the point where you're ready for one, the first few months in, you're not really a beginner anymore, are you? You're still getting into it. You're in it.
And if you want an anemone in your tank, but you don't think you're ready for it yet,
and Billy, who can be one for free?
No.
Billy will
put it in a test tube. Yeah, that'll work. No, get a fake one. As long as it's reef safe. Like there's these weird like silicone anemone props. For the first 2 months before I got my anemone prematurely, my clownfish, my Ocellaris clownfish were hosting in a fake white and pink, obviously fake anemone. And when I showed people my tank, I think it was Amazon. And when I showed people my tank, guess what they looked at first and what they focused on instead of the really expensive real corals? They focused on the fake anemone and the clownfish that were in it. So you can very easily replicate that excitement with a fake anemone while you're waiting and watching for a good deal and waiting for yourself and your tank to be ready.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Did we get any questions in the form? The question form?
How do you deal with dino? Oh, question by Val. Question, by Val866. How do you deal with dinos in a nano-sized tank?
Get a bigger tank.
You heard it. You heard him, Val. Yeah, you're the problem.
No, I mean, it's so tricky because whatever fluctuations are triggering the dinos or triggered them to begin with, they're going to happen. They're going to keep happening. However, once dinos have reached like a critical mass, it doesn't matter if what your nutrients are. So chasing your nutrients after you have a dino problem will rarely help.
No.
You have to focus on out-competing or removing enough of the dinos that they no longer out-compete whatever else is in the tank.
I'd say the first thing is always to make sure you know what kind you're working with. And that's something that a lot of people skip. Like, make sure you're dealing with actual dinos, and then do what you have to do. Otherwise, just do water changes, raise your flow up a bit, and let your tank be chill. And then you'll be good to go.
And when you do the water changes, make sure they're targeted, so you're siphoning off as much of the dinos as you can.
Right.
Focus more on removing dinos than removing water.
Yeah.
Like, turn your flow down to whatever minimum flow you need to suck the dinos up. Oh, and then after you do the water change, help with the out-competing, and like dose whatever cycling bacteria you have left over, or like Mycobacter 7 or something else that'll help restabilize the numbers in favor of the beneficial stuff instead of the dinos.
Yes.
And if you have dinos for more than 3 weeks, there's a dino support group that will like help you identify them and find a proper way to deal with them that doesn't just do water changes.
It's called Slice of the Reef, and it's coming to a podcast.
No, I don't want to help people with dinos. I don't care about that stuff.
Dinosaurs.
Any other questions?
I don't think we have anything in the audience.
Nice. All right.
I think we're good. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in to today's episode.
Wait. Random ask. What do you do to treat anemones, and how do you know if a nem is causing the other nem to be stressed? The nem I shown split from its mother. So Random showed us a nem that was extruding its mouth like the way I was telling you, a bubble tip. And he's not sure if the mother is hurting the baby anemone.
So the first thing you want to do is isolate them. If you really think they're a problem, you want to isolate them. The mother shouldn't be hurting the baby. That rarely ever happens. If it's the same nem splitting, think of them as the same thing, because it's a clone. It's a straight clone. So they
genetically identical.
Yeah, they will not attack another. The mother
never attack your twin.
Yeah, the mother won't hurt the baby. What could be happening is, now that you have two nems there, they're releasing something that your supernova that your CSP isn't happy with. You just want to be careful with it. You could always isolate them and see if things get better. Do a water change in both tanks and just keep an eye out, because nems can be territorial and your tank is fairly small relative to what they want to be kept in. So keeping 3 nems in the 29 gallon or like a 20 gallon isn't very optimal, because at some point if 2 different ones are going to keep fighting.
Yeah. So if you don't have like a quarantine tank you can put it in, just put it in like an isolation box. Dose iodine, maybe do like a course of chemiclean. That might help. But also make sure that wherever it is, it's getting enough light, because the mother might have bullied it away from the main source of light just by taking up the light and shading it.
That's actually a really good one. Proper lighting is really important for that.
Mm-hmm. That's why my first nem got sick, I think, in retrospect. Sorry, I waited until you talked and started talking again. That's why my first nem started being stressed in the first place. It was basically in the dark, because I didn't want to put it near my good light, because that's where my corals were and I didn't want it to sting them. So it was maybe getting like 60 par, and it was stretching outwards, and it was not getting enough energy to fight off whatever infected it. I would put it in a cut up plastic bottle that's weighted with like rocks or something, just closer to the light. And then you can take it out if you can. Treat with chemiclean, make sure your iodine is above 0, stuff like that.
Yep. Although you don't want to dose iodine in a smaller tank, because you're going to be putting a lot of stuff at risk that way. But yeah, you can try isolating it. I would say isolate it first. That's my go-to. Yeah. Especially with that situation.
I wouldn't isolate it in a cut up plastic bottle, because then it would just die. You want to put it in like maybe a gallon bucket with an air stone and its own dedicated heater and light. But at that point, it's just a quarantine tank, so you might as well set up a quarantine tank.
Yeah, don't put it in a plastic bottle. That is a really bad idea.
Only use the bottle if it's within your larger tank. That's what I thought you meant.
Oh man.
So like isolating it in its little bottle jail, but with the top cut off so it has flow and light stuff.
Yep. But that's also not very good. It's almost the same as like keeping one in the beaker. But
Well, I keep one in the beaker and it seems to be doing fine.
Oh yeah. It's very open up and happy, Billy.
It is.
It's so open up. It looks exactly. I've had nems in the water looking at that thing and they're like, wow, that thing's living the life. I think it's living the life. You know?
It is very opened up. It wasn't opened up on that day because, again, it was trying to have the best of both worlds, but it is not Hannah Montana, so it could not have the best of both worlds.
Wow.
Unfortunately.
But do what you can.
Yep.
Do what you can. But yeah.
Okay. I gotta go.
Thank you guys for another episode of Slice of the Reef. We enjoy having you guys here. And we will see you next time. Until then,
Farewell.
Billy.
Shit.
Do the thing.
Farewell and easy reefing.
I did the thing.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Slice of the Reef.
Your number one podcast for all things fishy, with your hosts, Giancarlo and Billy. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else that podcasts are held. That way, you'll never miss an episode. If you want to be a part of our podcast, join us on discord.xyz/Slice of the Reef, where we'll be recording in front of a live audience. We also give you a moment at the end of every episode for a live Q&A session, and we're very interactive with our fans. So we'd love for you to join. You can also check out our website for articles, guides, calculators, and information on our upcoming episodes at sliceofthereef.org. Hope to see you guys soon.
Farewell and easy reefing.